Are you psychic? What does that even mean? Many of us have had undeniable personal experiences of abilities, knowings, communications beyond the usual physical senses that we consider normal perception. The problem arises when we try to communicate about it or to understand it logically or scientifically. But perhaps the problem is with our science and not our experience. In order for science to be able to explain extrasensory experiences, it needs to understand how the mind affects the body. It needs to be able to understand the reality of dreams and how we can perceive like the same sort of world in a dream without all the physical laws and stuff that modern science assumes. We need to be able to know we're not hallucinating or misperceiving. We know that we have imperfect senses. Thus, in this spirit of searching for truths and theories that encompass more of our experiences, I'm sharing our next podcast episode, Understanding How ESP Works, from Shabda Psyche, part of Shabda.co website. Welcome to the Science of Perfection podcast. Join me in exploring a new paradigm, an ancient, modernly applicable philosophy of everything. Life does come with a guidebook. It's called the Vedas, and scholar, scientist, and teacher Ashish Dallela presents its wisdom in an accessible manner. I'm audiobook narrator and yoga student Leslie Howard. In these episodes, I will be narrating articles from the website Shabda.co that reveal exciting insights on how the world works, the shortcomings of modern science and religions, and how we can integrate logic, physics, biology, psychology, sociology, and philosophy into a consistent worldview that resolves the concepts of oneness and difference, and gives hope, wisdom, and guidance for understanding our lives and our purpose. Understanding How ESP Works by Ashish Dallela, May 30th, 2026. The Western Theory of Perception. A theory of perception precedes ESP. Before we can understand extrasensory perception, we have to understand sensory perception. And before we can understand sensory perception, we have to understand dreams, hallucinations, and misperceptions. The reason is quite simple. Whatever we call sense perception could also be dreams, hallucinations, or misperceptions. So how are we going to claim that we are perceiving something rather than misperceiving, hallucinating, or dreaming it? Conversely, many would call extrasensory perception simply dreams, hallucinations, or misperceptions. But if we don't have a way to demarcate dreams, hallucinations, and misperceptions from perceptions, then how are we going to claim that these are not perceptions? If we have two things, A and B, and we don't know how they differ, then when we see A, we cannot say it is not B. And when we see B, we cannot say it is not A. If we cannot distinguish perception from hallucination, if we claim to perceive, we cannot deny it being a hallucination. And if we claim to hallucinate, we cannot deny it being a perception. Thus, we cannot claim that extrasensory perceptions are hallucinations, not perceptions. Therefore, before we talk about extrasensory perception, we must talk about perception. And before we do that, we must talk about misperception, hallucination, and dreams. For extrasensory perception to be valid, our theory of perception must show that there are limitations in ordinary perception, which might be overcome by select individuals to perceive something that everyone else cannot perceive. If there is no theory of perception, there are no limitations in perception, then no way to overcome them, and then no room of extrasensory perception. Therefore, a theory of perception is required before we talk of extrasensory perception. The reality is that neither Western philosophy nor psychology ever developed a genuine theory of dreams, hallucinations, and misperceptions. So they also never developed a theory of perception. So they never knew what the limitations of ordinary perception are. So they don't know what extraordinary abilities in perception can be. So they cannot accept anyone having those abilities. How religion destroyed epistemology. The root cause of the absence of a theory of dreams, hallucinations, or misperceptions is religious dogmas. For example, Descartes, who talked about hallucinations and misperceptions, also talked about an evil demon controlling his mind to make him see unreal things, because this was the norm in Christianity. According to this way of thinking, extrasensory perception must be demon possession. In earlier times, those who rejected Christian beliefs were said to be controlled by demons. There is a long history of demon exorcism in Christianity, as priests attributed most problems to demons and tried to purge those demons or kill the possessed. For example, when plagues spread in Europe, people were burned alive in their homes because of the priestly belief that their homes had been visited by the devil. Priests tried to cure human suffering from diseases by purging demons. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, psychology began to be developed in Europe after gaining access to Vedic texts, which had a detailed theory of the mind. One of the key ideas that emerged in Western psychology early on was that of the unconscious. But the biggest question was, how is the unconscious created? In Vedic texts, the unconscious is created through many lifetimes of impressions. But Christianity doesn't allow many lifetimes. So European psychologists claimed that the unconscious was created by suppressing the conscious. Sigmund Freud was the earliest proponent of this idea. He said that humans had many lusty desires, but they were suppressed by moral strictures of religion, and that suppression forced the conscious mind to become unconscious, and then that unconscious mind caused dreams. In those dreams, humans tried to fulfill their unfulfilled, suppressed desires. These things were easily accepted in European society because men had supposedly descended from a sinful Adam and Eve, so it was no surprise that they had lusty desires. These were also accepted because society publicly taught morality, but privately, people were engaged in all kinds of sins. And so the unconscious mind became an extension of Christian theology, rather than past life experiences. Now it wasn't demon possession, but suppression of the sinful desires that everyone was already born with. The problem of Western epistemology. All these things had an adverse effect on epistemology, including theories of perception, because to develop a theory of dreams, hallucinations, or misperceptions, there were only two options: A, demon possession, or B, lust suppression. And so epistemology divorced itself from dreams, hallucinations, or misperceptions, and from the problem of perceptual errors. After that, epistemology focused solely on the waking state. But because a person could also be demon-possessed or lust-suppressed during waking, because Descartes had already argued in his philosophy that when he sees the world, he could be possessed by an evil demon, Humans had to fully offload perception to instruments. Humans could only record meter readings, created by physical forces, and even for them to correctly record meter readings, their sense impressions had to be created by the same physical forces as the meter readings. The dogma of demon possession wiped out the role of the mind in Western philosophy, as theology claimed that man could never trust his senses or mind. The dogma of inherited sin explained why humans had dreams, hallucinations, and misperceptions. To sidestep the problems created by sins and demons, scientific epistemology chose visible and not invisible causes. Now what you see is created by forces, the same forces that cause meter readings, and you are only seeing the meter that truly sees the reality. Thus we got the modern theory of perception. Forces impinge on our senses, a signal goes to the brain, and we see things. What about dreams? When no forces impinge on our senses, and we still see things? What about the fact that we feel the presence of people standing behind us when no forces are impinging on us? What about the fact that forces are always acting on everything, but our perception is selective and occasional? What about the fact that forces are quantifiable, but what we see is qualitative? Factually, the force theory is neither necessary nor sufficient to explain experiences. It is not necessary because we can see the same thing in dreams. It is not sufficient because it doesn't explain why we feel a presence without seeing. Something that is neither necessary nor sufficient can never be a cause. In fact, perception contradicts the idea of forces because it is occasional, selective, and qualitative. But what can never be the cause is taken to be the only cause, even ignoring the fact that it contradicts perception. After all, what is the alternative? Within the Western worldview, we can choose between demon possession or lust suppression. The Vedic theory of the mind. The mind is a vibrating drum analogy. The Vedic theory of perception begins with dreams, hallucinations, and misperceptions. It says, everything we see, including what we see during waking and dreaming, is produced from our mind. The mind is just like a drum that can produce different vibrations. And all our dreams, hallucinations, misperceptions, and perceptions are simply vibrations of the drum. These vibrations are created by a stick called prana, or life force, that hits the drum to create the vibration in the drum. That stick can be operated by something internal to the mind when we see dreams, or something external to the mind when we perceive the world, or a mixture of the two when we misperceive the world. The stick can be controlled by divine and demonic beings to create divine and demonic visions. The stick can be controlled by powerful humans for mind control. The stick can be controlled by the unconscious mind. And so, humans can have divine inspiration, demonic possession, correct perception, correct and incorrect dreams, misperception or hallucination while waking, and mind control invasion of our private life to do idea injection and removal by external parties. Everything is possible based on who gets hold of the stick to beat the drum. Thus, right away, we are not constrained by the physical idea of forces impinging on our senses to create perception. We neither rule out divine inspiration and demon possession, nor do we equate them with misperception and hallucination. The reason is that there are many hands that could beat the drum with a stick. just as there are many unique holders of the stick. Similarly, each drum is unique. No two drums are identical, so no two minds will ever have the same mental life. This is not a problem for epistemology because the same reality can be correctly described in many ways. However, it also doesn't mean that every description is correct. The drum may be dirty or covered by cloth, and it will not sound as it should. The drum must be cleaned and uncovered, after which its vibrations will be correct. A spiritual process exists to clean and uncover the drum. If that process is complete, everything a person perceives, while waking or dreaming, is correct. Even if a demon gets hold of the stick to beat the drum will produce those sounds that will scare away the demon. The mind maintains latent impressions. If the mind is not purified, it always reveals something from past impressions. As a result, we can never know something completely new. Even if we see something we have never seen, we always interpret it in terms of what we already know. An example is Vedic theology, which describes a hierarchy of deities, in which the top is the whole and the successive lower levels are parts. Both whole and part exist, but the parts are not independent of the whole. All Abrahamic religions describe this theology in terms of the ideas they already know, that is, monotheism and polytheism. Most have never heard of henotheism, a hierarchy of deities, and certainly nobody knows of a whole-part theory in which whole and part are individuals united in purpose. Hardly anyone tries to even understand what the Vedic theology truly is, even if they encounter it. They always simplify it to monotheism or polytheism. This shows how it is impossible to know something new. Our minds are not designed for novelty. They are designed to categorize and classify reality into pre-existing categories. These categories are the latent impressions in the mind. They are not fixed. They can be changed. However, change is slow and takes a lot of effort. So we never get new ideas easily or quickly. We get them slowly and incrementally. We can't simply read a book with genuinely new ideas and understand it like we would understand a book with genuinely old ideas. That is because the book with old ideas selects pre-existing ideas from the mind, and the book with new ideas cannot select pre-existing ideas because they don't yet exist, so it makes the best choice from the available ideas. Since that selection doesn't match the actual idea in the book, the mind feels discomfort and creates an idea slightly different from the existing idea. If we read the book with a new idea again, we get another slightly better idea, this time closer to the new idea in the book. The mental expansion and contraction. In this way, we learn new things not by a single reading, but by encountering the new thing over and over. With each iteration, we inch closer and closer to the actual idea, if we did not already have that idea. If we already had the idea, we would jump straight into the existing idea. And so, learning new things is hard, but adding incremental ideas to the existing thing is easy. This field of ideas from which we can select is called kshetra in Vedic texts, and most people call it mind. The mind can expand or contract, which is why we talk about broad-minded and narrow-minded people. A narrow-minded person has a small field of ideas, so he can only understand a few things. A broad-minded person has a vast field of ideas, so they can understand many more things. The word mind doesn't strike us as something that expands or contracts, but the word kshetra or field does, so it is a better expression. The expanded or contracted mind is carried over from one life to another. For instance, a person with musical ability in the past recovers that musical ability very fast in this life, while a person without that ability from the past takes a long time to acquire it in this life. Music is an idea. Everyone doesn't understand that idea. It can be new to some and old to others. Those who find it new take more time. The impressions we acquire in this life, such as music, carry forward into future lives. And so everyone is advised to create good, valuable, and moral impressions. If we don't change our impressions, they carry over lifetimes. And so our current thoughts, emotions, intentions, aptitudes, and values are not the result of experiences within this life alone. They are carried over from many lifetimes. Hence, nobody is born a blank slate, and nobody can fully blame others for their thinking patterns. The Vedic theory of perception. Methods of mind-body world interaction. The experiences of the mind are created by prana, or life force. It has 3 features: autonomous control of the working of the mind and body, due to which we get thoughts without effort, and food digests without effort. And so most people think that the mind and body must be a machine since they are working autonomously. Autonomous bidirectional interaction between a person's mind and body, due to which most people think that mind and body must be just one thing, because they can always find mental counterparts of the body and bodily counterparts of the mind. Autonomous bidirectional interaction between the minds and the bodies of different persons, due to which most people think that our perception must be the result of physical forces moving according to deterministic mathematical laws of nature. Thus, when we talk about a life force, most people think it can't be true because the body and mind are running like a machine, creating interactions and perceptions automatically, while life force requires a conscious intervention all the time. Even this idea is the result of monotheistic religions that removed all gods and goddesses who were earlier controlling the world. The question is, how were they controlling? The answer is that they can remotely control reality through prana. Physics is not the first to talk about action at a distance. Physics only depersonalized the actor into an object and replaced a life force with a mechanical force. And so, whatever we call autonomous working is actually the working of the life force, but in the control of superior personalities called devas in the Vedic texts. The body and mind are like a chauffeur-driven car. The chauffeur makes the car appear autonomous. Gaining mastery over the autonomous. Despite the fact that autonomous working is normally under the control of devas, they can also be controlled by the soul's will, which is separate from both the mind and the body, just like a passenger can instruct the chauffeur to go to the destination he wants. The difference in the life force is that the chauffeur doesn't always listen to the passenger, but he also does not always ignore the passenger. The chauffeur listens to the passenger based on a moral, natural order. A, the chauffeur can do many new things for the passenger, and that is natural order. But B, the chauffeur does those things only if the passenger is morally deserving. Very few individuals are permitted control over others, but everyone is permitted self-control. Those who are allowed control over others are allowed based on pious deeds. But everyone can try to develop self-control. Thus, there are yogic practices to control the working of prana called pranayama. The purpose of these practices is to bring our mind and body under the will's control. Most people have a false idea about our bodies being run by the laws of chemistry. They don't know that atoms and molecules exist only as potentials in quantum theory, and nobody knows what activates these potentials, famously called the quantum measurement problem. The short answer is prana. There are no laws of chemistry, because a chemical reaction requires a fermion or boson to be emitted or absorbed, and these emissions or absorptions cannot be predicted. So chemical reactions also cannot be predicted. It's also well known that the same biomolecule behaves differently inside and outside the body. If things were left to the random and probabilistic outcomes entailed by quantum theory, we would all be dead in a moment. We are alive because there is something other than atoms and molecules. That is prana, or life force. It interacts with matter, perceives it, and controls it. Normal and paranormal experience paths. Due to the 3 kinds of prana noted previously, there are at least 2 pathways to perception. First, prana causes interaction between bodies to create a representation of the world in the body. After that, prana causes interaction between the body and the mind, and the bodily representation becomes a mental experience. This is what we call normal perception. Second, prana causes an interaction between the mind and other minds or bodies, and a mental experience is created. After that, prana causes interaction between the mind and its body, and mental experiences become a bodily representation. This is what we call paranormal perception, because the interaction between bodies is not the cause of the mental experience, the normal case, but rather an effect of that experience. This is why ESP is also called the sixth sense. Under Western thinking, sense means organs of the body, and the sixth sense means the mind, or something other than the 5 organs. But in Vedic thinking, there are 5 senses, separate from the organs of the body, plus a mind, also separate from the body, collectively called the 6 senses. These 6 senses are the sixth sense in the Western notion of sense. In the normal perception, the body interacts with other bodies, and the 6 senses interact with one's own body, the so-called mind-body interaction. But in paranormal perception, the 6 senses interact directly with the world, other minds and bodies. And after they get an understanding of the world unmediated by the body can get a representation as well. All these are effects of prana, but they follow different paths. A, normal is body followed by mind. B, paranormal is mind followed by body. Even the normal path can be controlled by will, because life force is not a mechanical force, and the idea of mechanical force existed in classical mechanics, but died in quantum mechanics. Now we have dormant potentials and a force to activate them. This activating force works under the control of devas, and when devas work in an orderly manner, we can get the illusion of classical mechanical determinism. For example, planets go round and round in a deterministic manner, so they must be moving by mathematical laws. But prana is a life force, not a mechanical force. The proof is that we can even control the same force by will. But for that, we have to gain self-mastery. This is what Ashtanga yogis strive for. They gain self-mastery, and if they have done good deeds, they are given mastery over the world. But if they abuse that power, it goes away. And they suffer because the chauffeur is always in control of the car, and even if he goes left or right based on a passenger's request, he doesn't lose the power to deny a passenger. And so moral and natural order are just one order. Power without a good purpose causes self-harm, but a good purpose without power causes no self-harm. Therefore, the reformation of purpose is far more important and a prior necessity before the acquisition of power. 3 aspects of world causality: Adi-daivika, Adi-bhautika, and Adi-atmika. Vedic texts classify all causality into 3 parts, called Adi-atmika, what happens within an observer or his mind-body; Adi-bhautika, what happens in the observed or other mind-bodies; and Adi-daivika, what happens in between 2 sets of minds and bodies. To take a simple example, I do my work, my employer pays me, because there is a connection between my employer and me. I am not employed with every possible employer. My employer does not employ everyone. There is a specific connection between the 2. This connection is established by a moral, natural order in the cosmos. The natural part of the causation is that I can do the work and get paid by an employer. The moral part of the causation is that the current connection is established due to my previous good or bad actions. And my current good or bad actions will determine what kinds of connections will be established in the future. In classical mechanics, one object affects every other object in the universe. But in quantum mechanics, an emitted boson, force particle, goes to a select destination, not everywhere in the universe. So, quantum mechanics destroyed the classical idea of force as one thing interacting with everything. It introduced the idea of one-to-one interactions. Of course, nobody knows where the emitted boson goes because there is no concept of relation between 2 things, and Adi-daivika causality that establishes the connection. That cannot be done without bringing moral causation into natural causation and treating both as a single type of causation. My mind and body give me some proclivity and ability. I can do certain types of work, and I want to do certain types of work. But I am not guaranteed the opportunity to be employed by someone and get paid by them. Likewise, my employer has some ability and proclivity. He wants a certain type of work done, and he can pay a certain amount. But he is not guaranteed the opportunity to get the type of employee he wants for the amount he can pay. So both the employer and employee search for matching opportunities, but they are not guaranteed to get what they want, because the match is made by the moral natural order in the cosmos. Application to extrasensory perception. The 3 aspects of causality we just mentioned are general principles and apply even to perception. For example, I may have the ability to enjoy food. I may have the proclivity to enjoy food, but I may not get the opportunity to enjoy food. Conversely, I may get the opportunity to enjoy, but I may not have the ability or the proclivity. Of these, the opportunity is most important, the ability is next important, and proclivity is least important. An easy example is employment. I have to work in the job I can get, even if I don't have the ability and proclivity for it. If I want to keep the job, I must develop the ability for the job, even if I have no proclivity for it. Finally, if I want to be happy in the job, which is needed for success and long-term employment, I must develop the proclivity for doing the job. So most people just get whatever job they can get, then develop an ability for doing it, and over time, they start enjoying it. Those who are luckier, we will talk about luck in a moment, have more opportunities to choose from, which gives them more flexibility in choosing the opportunity that conforms to their proclivity and/or ability. But opportunity still remains the highest determinant of success. Proclivity matters only if we have multiple abilities to choose from, but otherwise, this order holds true. Many people talk about destiny. What is that destiny? It is the moral natural order that creates opportunities. Nature controls our lives by controlling our opportunities. The family we are born into, the upbringing we receive, the money we can get, the education we can obtain, the jobs we can work in, the relationships we can have, and the love, appreciation, and support we receive. All the outside-in stuff is fully controlled, but the inside-out stuff is less controlled. We cannot change what we get, but we can change what we give, or how we respond to what we get. Based on our giving and responses, we get another life with its own destiny. ESP is the ability to use prana beyond the constraints of the body. To use this ability, we must have the proclivity and opportunity. Even if we have the proclivity, the natural cosmic order must open that opportunity. There may be times when this opportunity is open or closed. There may be times when this opportunity is more open than other times. There may be targets in relation to which this opportunity may be open more than others. There may be times, places, and situations when our abilities to use prana may be enhanced or diminished. There may be times, places, and situations when our proclivities to use the abilities rise or fall. Thus, ESP abilities cannot be consistently demonstrated, except by very rare individuals who may not want to demonstrate them. Who, with great powers, wants to be under the microscope of someone who does not understand their power, or does not want to? Knowing the past, present, and future. Modern physics has a false idea of causality, in which the past and future don't exist, as if Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle do not shape the current thinking in the West, as if individuals, companies, and countries do not put out plans for the future. Has nobody made historical movies depicting life in the past? Or does nobody make models of things that are being imagined for the future? The problem is not past or future, but materialism, which strips reality of meaning and postulates objects to be the only reality. And yet, materialism is false. The past and future exist as symbols right now. They also exist within us as histories and destinies. Quantum theory shows that reality exists as potentials. Quantum theory also describes the probabilities of these potentials being activated. The potentials could have been activated in the past, can be activated in the present, or could be activated in the future. And so knowing what the potentials are is itself knowing what might have existed in the past or might exist in the future. There is nothing surprising about knowing the past or future for those who understand quantum physics and aren't bred on materialism. The past and future exist in each person as their history and destiny. Monotheistic religions rejected rebirth, but otherwise every ancient civilization accepted that we are born many times, so we carry memories of the past, which can be accessed in the present. Even if we don't access it, it influences our lives unconsciously. Likewise, monotheistic religions rejected karma. But otherwise, every ancient civilization accepted that our present lives are shaped by our destinies created in previous lives through our actions. These destinies can be known, astrology predicts them, but even if we don't access them, they influence our lives unconsciously. The knowledge of past and future is a mystery to those who follow monotheistic religions, which reject a person's history and destiny. But it was common knowledge earlier, and it is still common knowledge for followers of non-monotheistic religions. Modern science was built on the foundation of monotheistic religions, in which there is no history or destiny. Monotheistic religions also reduced the soul to breath in the body, which made both body and soul material. Resurrection of the body further solidified this materialistic view of reality, and modern science simply co-opted this materialism from religion into science. The net result of that materialism is mechanical forces, not life force, material particles, not symbols, quantitative properties, not qualitative meanings, and mathematical laws, not chauffeur-driven cars. Materialism makes ESP impossible, and yet even monotheistic religions need to rely on revelations, angels, demons, and miracles, which necessitate paranormal powers. Therefore, these religions are false, because they cut the legs on which they stand, and the science based on them is false because it contradicts reasoning and observation. The problem of ESP is not hard if we know why we need to discard the science, religion, philosophy foundation of materialism. If we do that, then knowing the past and future is the same as knowing everything else. The prana activates potentials, and those potentials can be in our body-mind or another body-mind. The activation of that potential can bring us face-to-face with the past or future, because both exist right now as potentials. When reality is material, the past and future don't exist in the present. But when reality is potentials, then past and future also exist in the present. The ability, proclivity, and opportunity for targeting prana to activate some potentials vary with time, place, situation, and person, so the process is not consistent or repeatable. But if we have a consistent and complete theory of perception, then we also know the uncommon pathways to extrasensory perception. psyche.shabda.co/2026/05/30/understanding-how-ESP-works.